Philip asked a question earlier. I told him I would ask us, so we'll.
Okay, what is it?
The word karat means to cut. Now, I think it came out of Deuteronomy 12, but I'm looking at it now. But I'm actually doing like 5 things at once, so I'm not following very well. But it says to cut. So he was actually suggesting, Hashem was saying that that the sacrifice itself will be cut off in the world to come. But I'm responding saying that's not true, because it actually says specifically in the prophecies that there will be sacrifices made, like in the world to come. So that's not what he was saying.
Well,
but
and it also says, by the way, that the Messiah himself will be doing sacrifices.
Oh yeah.
Of a certain kind.
Right.
And as I remember correctly, it's the Asham, which is sometimes translated.
Guilt
it
offering,
depends on the translation. Sometimes they translate it as guilt offering.
Yep, right.
Sometimes they translate it as a trespass offering. But it's a very interesting concept about the Asham sacrifice.
Right.
Only the person who did the sin can offer the guilt sacrifice for that sin.
Right. And the priest, the high priest himself, has to offer, and Christianity can't really accept this or don't wrap their head around it, but the high priest himself, as they call the high priest, has to offer sacrifices for his own personal sins. But they can't buy that because they say Jesus is perfect and he has no sin. So it's a really huge conflict for sure.
That's a whole video in itself.
Right. 12. Hey, thank you, Philip. 1229. I'm looking at it now. It's 11, 12, 13. I want to see what 29 says. So 1229 in the English on Chabad says, when the Lord your God cuts off the nations, that's the word, cuts off the nations. Now keep in mind, the nations is not Israel. The nations is like everybody but Israel. So that's very key for you to understand. So cuts off the nations to which you will come. Okay, so
dispossess them and settle in the land. Beware of being lured into their ways after they've been wiped out before you. Do not inquire about their gods, saying, how did those nations worship their gods? I too will follow those practices. You shall not act thusly towards the Lord your God, for they perform for their gods every abhorrent act that the Eternal hates. They even offer up their sons and daughters in fire to their gods.
Right. So Hagoyim is like the nations. It's not the Jewish people. It's that when he cuts off those people from doing their sacrifices. So the point being, Philip, is not saying that God is going to cut off the sacrifices of the Jewish people or of Tanakh itself.
It explicitly says,
right.
Yachrit et Hagoyim.
Let's see.
It's the very beginning of 29. Ki Yachrit Adonai Elohecha et Hagoyim.
Yep, right there.
So what's being cut off is the Goyim,
right?
The nations.
Oh, come here. I'm trying to get this where I can highlight it. Can't do it. There we go. Trying to grab it. There we go. Right there. That's the key phrase right there. Yep. So, Philip, I hope that helped. I think that might make sense to you. I hope. Okay. Walter Vogler says the priest has to be clean first. True. Laura A. Rabbi.
Right, but that's all part of how to do the sacrifice. It doesn't command doing the sacrifice. Is my whole point.
Right. You know, it's kind of like my understanding. It was kind of like this. You know, whenever in the very very beginning of the first commandments ever listed chronologically in the Tanakh, had to do with slavery, right? And Hashem basically told the people, if you do decide that you just must take a person from this whole thing, talking about a female slave, and he says, if you're just so bound and determined to do this, then do it this way, because it's like Hashem knew that they were going to do it. So if you're going to make it so that
but it's so prevalent, you can't just rip the Jews away from the culture that does blood sacrifices.
Right.
You can't just say, boom, stop doing it. They just left. For God's sakes, they just left Egypt.
Right. But the point is, they
certainly did. Well, I'm sorry. What?
I guess my point to make, if a Christian, for example, is watching this, for them to be able to accept the idea of what we're talking about now, about blood sacrifices were not commanded, they were permitted. That's the point. To further that point, they would say, well, that never happened anywhere else in the Tanakh, so how can you say that? Well, yes, it did. It happened right there in the very first chronological commandment with the prisoners of war. God said, because he specifically said, if you do, then if you're going to do it, then do it this way, and this will keep you in check. That's the point. So that's the whole idea.